Good morning. This is Rachel Johnson here with another edition of Ask Cascadia Live. Today we are answering questions about Amazon review text, emails, Amazon custom, and some registered brand questions. Okay, so a couple of real quick reminders. The first one is that Prime Day Bootcamp starts this Monday and runs through July 10th. The cost is just $397, and what you can expect to get out of it is day-by-day, step-by-step tasks to keep your store ready and pumped for a big selling day. So looking into what you need to do for your listings, what you need to do for your SEO. We have some cool new stuff that we're adding. We first did this last year for Q4 Bootcamp, and I think that it got some pretty good feedback. So if you are in that, would love to hear your feedback for anyone else in the group. And we're doing it a little bit differently. There will still be daily tasks and daily videos, but we'll have live sessions 3 days a week. So that way you can do your homework, and then the live sessions we actually talk about it. So a little bit different, but hopefully even more impactful, as you'll already have the videos and content from before, and then we're just going to go over what questions you have. So if you are just getting started on, say, your SEO and you've never done SEO before for Amazon, well, then we'll have a lot to talk about and a lot to discuss and improve for your listings. Okay. Good morning, Carrie. Good morning, Lee. Okay. Next thing is Relentless Woman, which I am super, super excited about. And it starts on Tuesday, June 18th. And remember, it is 3 days. And the first day is all about developing a product line. So if you aren't doing private label yet, or you're just getting started, then this is the day for you. The second day is all about Amazon and various Amazon-focused speakers, Amazon-focused topics. And the third day is all about off Amazon. So taking your business off Amazon, using software for off Amazon, using social media, websites, and so on. So something for everyone. So we're super excited to have you guys join, and the cost is nothing. It's absolutely free. It's an online summit, so that you don't have to worry about getting out of your pajamas if that's a thing, or if you have a day gig and you've got other things going on during the day, then it'll be recorded for later. So not nearly as time and energy impactful as going to a live conference can be. But since we're doing it on the Facebook groups, there's just as much communication and chat and interaction. In fact, in some ways, I think you might actually get more interaction in a forum like this, where it's online and everyone's posting and talking, than you do at some of the shows, because usually only, maybe 5 or 6 questions can actually be answered in a show. Whereas with what we're doing, we have lots of questions and we've committed to answering every single one that comes in. So looking forward to having you guys there. And yeah, all right. So now on to the questions. As usual, please post them on the chat while we're going. And if you're watching the replay, please put replay in your question so that we know that you have a question that we haven't answered during the actual session. Okay. All right. So next, is it allowed to use Amazon review text in marketing or images? Does it matter if they would be used on or off Amazon? For instance, can I put a reviewer's exact words and quotes alongside some imagery? Okay, so from a copyright standpoint, technically Amazon owns the copyright for any content produced on its website. So that's just at a high level. What you're thinking about is Amazon's copyright. Now, in terms of what Amazon policy allows or prohibits on Amazon, you're not supposed to put testimonials or commentary from customers on your listings. That's why for customer reviews on Amazon, I'll usually take the best ones and just rewrite them for the page, using their exact words, using everything, and just rewrite it as though it was actually a statement. And that's the safest approach you can take on Amazon. Now, even though Amazon technically owns the copyright to the content, off Amazon, say posts on Facebook, posts on your website, testimonials on your website, whatever, Amazon isn't going to go hunting you down and trying to figure out if you used reviews from your page on Amazon and then put it on your website. They're just not going to look for that. Now, technically, are you legally permitted to do that? That's a bit of a gray area since it's customer generated content, but Amazon owns the copyright because it's on their website. But I have never had a problem with recommending that a client put it on their website or on Facebook or Instagram. And then for Amazon, you do have to be a bit careful because it will cut you off on the storefront. Any testimonials, they'll often cut you off when you're putting it into the storefront. And then for the detail page, the only thing that you can put through without having a review is the bullets and descriptions. So sometimes I've seen people put reviews in the bullets and description and get it through just fine. But just keep in mind that if anyone from Amazon looks at it, they'll probably say that you're not allowed to do that. Okay. All right, next question. Once you send a Jeff B escalation email, how long should it take to get a response, or is it laughable to think there is an SLA? Not laughable necessarily, but the SLA is more like 3 to 7 days. It's kind of more squishy. So if you're used to getting immediate support from seller support, you can call them, they can call you back, you get a response within 12 hours, then you're going to be unhappy with the results from the escalation team, because again, they usually respond Monday through Friday only during normal business hours, and the SLA is really like 3 to 7 days. So if you haven't heard from them in say 3 to 4 days, even just acknowledging that they received your request, because obviously that should come first, is an acknowledgement of receiving the request, then you can send a follow-up message and say, hey, I sent this, are there any updates? But don't send it like the next day. I've seen people send something on a Saturday, not get a response on a Sunday, send another message on a Sunday, and then another one on Monday. Don't do that. You should worry if you haven't gotten a response after about a week. Okay. So is the product classifier only used for items being loaded via template? What if you do not use a template upload? How can you find your product node ID number and verify that your classification is correct, optimal for your listing? Okay, so for the product classifier, what I'm assuming that you're talking about is the subcategory of the listing. So your subcategory would be, say, if you're in computers, then it would be desktop computers, all-in-one monitors, laptop computers, like those would be your subcategories. And when you're doing one by one, you select it when you create it, and that creates your subcategory. And then when you're doing it by template, you download a particular template within a subcategory. So if you have multiple subcategories, technically speaking, you're supposed to upload those in separate templates. So what if you do not use a template upload? Well, it is in the one by one. So if you put it in the one by one, then it is part of the download. You have to select where you're going to put it in terms of your subcategory. And then how do you find your product node ID number and verify that your classification is correct? So there's a few different thoughts around verifying your classification is correct or optimal. Regarding your product node ID number, you don't generally see that in the category listing report. If you want to see exactly what your subcategory is, you need to file a ticket to Amazon, to seller support, and ask for a category listing report to be enabled on your account. Then it'll be in your inventory reports. So manage inventory reports, and you can download it for 1 week. So it's very helpful to know what your product listings actually contain. For the question about whether it's correct or optimal for your listing, that's a broader question about who you want to compete with. So if you're thinking about, say, in supplements, if you ever looked at supplements is a really interesting category because they'll have more general supplements like vitamin supplements, or they'll have supplements for women, or they'll have a bunch of subcategories like that where it looks like it can overlap. And so what you want to look at is what the competition is in your subcategories that you could potentially work for. Now, depending on your product type, you may only have one subcategory that's reasonable, and then that's where you should be. You shouldn't be misclassified. You'll miss anyone who searches by browse, and then it makes it more difficult to rank within your subcategory. Some people don't care about that. So for something like supplements where you're trying to decide the best subcategory to be in, look at your competition, look how difficult it would be to rank within that subcategory. And basically what you're looking for in terms of choosing your subcategory is when you go into the browse, so it's under departments. When you come into Amazon, you go to departments, and then you go to like health and personal care and then supplements. And as you go through that browse node, then you'll get finally to a page where it'll say like top supplements for women, and then it'll be like the top 30 or whatever. So what you want to do is you want to find out, okay, here's my subcategory. This is the one that I think I can make it into the top 30, and then choose that. Now, if you don't think you can ever make it into the top 30, then who cares? It doesn't matter. And just find one that makes the most sense, because for most people, making it to the top 30 for their category is not going to happen. Just depends on how competitive your space is, but for most people, it's not going to happen. So what you need to be doing is thinking more about how you can get Amazon's choice for specific keywords, not thinking about how you can get bestseller ranking in your subcategory. They're two very different things. Okay. Lee clarified, I want to see the node spreadsheet that shows all the nodes for category. Oh, that one is differently. Where you find the node spreadsheet is actually on the same page as where the style guides are. Who knows why? I don't ask, I just memorize where things are. So if you want to find the browse node categories for each category, and you're trying to figure out what is actually available in total, then you should actually search in help. I know this is dumb. Search in help for style guide. And then on the style guide pages are the BTGs, the browse tree guide. So they're like alternating. So there's the browse tree guides and there's the style guides on the same page. Again, I don't ask why. I just, okay. Next question from Kathy is there a tutorial on using file uploads? Yeah, there's a couple of tutorials in the Selling University that are okay, that are not too bad. What I generally do when I'm creating file uploads is I'll create it exactly like it's supposed to. I will test it out, and maybe half the time it'll go through properly, even though I've done these a lot of times, and it's not as though I'm some sort of idiot when it comes to uploads. And about half the time it doesn't go through. And so the simplest thing to do at that point is simply to call Amazon, tell them the number of the submission that you made. They'll go through, they'll fix everything and push it through within about 20 to 30 minutes. So usually if it doesn't go through the first time, I don't even bother. I just have Amazon call me and walk through it, because it just, dealing with those stupid spreadsheets drives me crazy. Especially when I do it, all the time, and it still doesn't go through properly each time. Just like, oh. Okay, next question. For Amazon Custom, how important is it to trademark the store name? Waste of time and money or valuable tool? I'm in the process of trademarking a designer name for merch. Can I use this for custom and gather everything through brand registry into one storefront? That I think would be powerful if permitted. Yes, so I always recommend that you do have a trademark store name, because it gets you the brand registry, which gets you storefronts. I find storefronts to be very helpful for a couple reasons. One is you can direct traffic directly to a storefront, just like a landing page, except that it's on Amazon and people can buy on Amazon. People trust Amazon. So even if you're selling, say, books or merch, things that generally aren't going to get you a storefront, I've actually recommended to people before to even do like a keychain or anything in the regular marketplace so that they can get a storefront, they can register a storefront, and then bring in stuff like their books or merch into a storefront and drive traffic from external to Amazon to that storefront, not to the listing. You can track who is driving traffic to your storefront. You can track if it's from Instagram. You can track if it's from Facebook. You can track if it's from a particular blog post you wrote. All of this stuff is traceable on the storefront, and it's not on the individual listing. So especially for merch, where merch has so little content on their site, where it's so hard to use merch for using data, right? It's just, there's just not a lot of content there. So I highly recommend registering a trademark and then having all that on your storefront. So the question was, can I use for custom and gather everything through brand registry into one storefront? Yes, you can. And then for custom, keep in mind that the way that you use custom is you actually create a listing in Seller Central, and then you enroll it into custom and add the content there. So you do have to create a regular listing first, then enroll it into custom, and then you can work with it from there. Okay. All right. Next question. Oh, congrats, Kathy. That's awesome. Yeah, and you can make some really cool stuff. So one other thing about storefronts, I was just running an experiment with a client where we did 2 different messaging approaches for their product, basically going with a cost savings approach. They thought that cost savings was an important part of why people buy their product. I thought that it was more ecological. They thought ecological was important too, but I thought that was the reason why people would pay more for their product. So we made 2 different pages, one that was ecological focused and one that was cost focused, and then sent traffic, the same keywords, the same targets, everything looked the same, but to 2 different pages on the storefront. And the ecological focus had a value of $15 for every person sent to that page. People just kept buying. So that was really exciting. And what you can do there is you can do different pages, drive traffic to it, check the conversion rates, check the traffic costs. There's some just really cool stuff you can do with storefronts because they actually give you the data. Shocking. As opposed to the detail pages where, especially with merch, they don't give you the data. So that's a lot harder to see what is resonating with customers. Okay, next question. Do you have a recommendation for a UK warehouse for doing business with Amazon? This is Merchant Fulfilled. No, we don't yet. And this actually came up this last week, actually with a client. So we're looking into it. There is a client that we have that sells throughout the UK. So the first thing we're going to do is just ask them. So we'll see what they say and post in the group and see if we've got some good suggestions for UK warehouses. Okay, next question. I recently asked if you're a registered brand, can you put your brand website URL in the back of the product packaging? And Leo replied that it's actually a US labeling requirement to have either the URL or to have your full address. So support doesn't know what they're talking about. Here's but I created a case to ask support and I keep getting a generic answer that URL is considered marketing and you cannot have marketing info on the packaging. Do not listen to seller support. I can promise you, I can even tell you exactly which part of the CFR references the fact that you need to have your full address or your URL plus city and state on your packaging. You must have contact information on your packaging in the United States because if someone wants to sue you, they need to be able to find you. So it needs to be either your full address or city, state, and URL. It's absolutely required. And anyone who tells you otherwise at Amazon doesn't know what they're talking about because seller support never knows what they're talking about. The only time when you are, when seller support is reliable is when there's a clear SOP. Like, how do I upload this file template? Very helpful. How do I file this reimbursement request? Very helpful. How do I label my product to be compliant with US law? Not helpful at all. So don't rely on seller support for that. It is required to put your contact information on your packaging, period. Go to a store and look at the packaging that's in the store. You will find URLs, you will find addresses, either one or both. This is absolutely required and you can't miss it. It drives me crazy when people focus so much on Amazon requirements and forget that there's legal requirements about like selling in the United States that you should be paying attention to as well. And don't listen to seller support. Okay, off my soapbox about that. All right, next, my product is a bag. If I have 5 different listings under one seller account for the same product, but different designs, do I need to run separate PPC for each listing? How do I create a parent-child listing which has different designs and colors? Okay, so I personally, for a bag, I personally would not variate different designs. The reason why is because only the one that Amazon thinks will convert shows as the picture on the search results when someone just types in like one that your item converts for. So like, over the shoulder handbag, say, is something that you convert for. Anytime someone types in over the shoulder handbag, then Amazon chooses which picture shows. And something that's designed like apparel or like, shoes or handbags or something that's visually appealing, if you aren't showing what they're offering, then they're not going to click, right? If it's not interesting to them. And if there's 5 different designs, then they may or may not actually see the design they like. So I would always make sure that you have a different listing for each design. Then as far as the color question, you would want to have one listing per design, and then you could have variations per color. And so in that, you could either do an upload, in which you need to create parent-child listings in the upload. It's pretty simple. You say it's a variation, you list if it's a parent or a child, and then say which SKU is the parent. And then if you do it one by one, it's even easier. You just select that it's a variation and select the type, which would be color or size type. But what you really want to make sure of is that you want to have it variated, right? Because in search, in standard search, they don't show all your options. They show the one that's most likely to convert. The question about running separate PPC for each listing, yes. If you are in certain categories, like I believe it's clothing and shoes and luggage and jewelry, your variations typically have exactly the same rank. So all of your variations are ranked together. They're expected to be different size or color variations, and so they all have the same rank, and a bad color or a bad design can actually take down your whole listing. If you're outside of those categories, we just tested this in home goods and in automotive, each listing individually has its own rank. So for the PPC, you would just send it to the best listings to boost those and get those going as high as they can on your softline stuff. So that's apparel, shoes, handbags, and luggage and jewelry. For anything outside of those categories, you would actually need to run PPC per individual listing. Now, I still recommend running PPC per product in Softlines to figure out what the best keywords are for the black item or the raisin item. You can start seeing what particular colors people use, and so you can add those into the search terms. But long term, you would only want to run PPC on the top items and keep that rank going on the top items. Okay. All right, next question. Let me see if I can get this to scroll down. Okay, there we go. Tony asks, one of my main PL line of products is facing a 30% price increase. The main selling point is that these are made locally in Canada, so they're premium versus lower quality made in China. What is the best way to handle such an increase? Do you have customers who have to deal with such a high price increase? Yeah, so we're actually having that challenge right now. Not quite 30%, but 10 to 15 due to the tariffs that are coming up in the US for a lot of our clients. So the challenge is when you raise your price, you need to commensurately increase your claims on your page for why the price is so important. One of the biggest challenges that our clients have faced is when they're selling a premium product, but fail to in some way make sure that people understand how much more premium it is. So you can't just say locally made in Canada, therefore it is premium. You have to explain why being made in Canada makes it premium. So is there better quality control? Do people say that it lasts for years? What kind of experience can they expect to get out of it? And if you can approach it from that perspective, as in, why should I pay the extra $20? I have absolutely paid $50, $70 before for things. I have paid 10 because I didn't see the value in paying more. So if you're trying to get someone to pay a premium, you have to make them understand the value of it and why it's so much more special. We're working on this for a client in skincare now, and skincare is killer complicated to work in. And for them, they have this, unique proprietary blend of ingredients. And for that, no one's ever seen it before. No one even knows what this word is that they made up to describe their premium blend of ingredients. And so we're having to educate consumers as to why this product is 20 to 30% more for the same exact thing than any of the competitors. And so talking about the ingredients, making sure that people understand why this is the best thing ever. And once they buy it, they keep buying it. Our subscribe and save rates are great, but it's getting them over that initial hump where they say, okay, that's it. The other thing that you would want to do is make sure that you get a few really detailed and high quality reviews. Now, I don't recommend, paying for reviews on a regular basis. A lot of people who have gotten in trouble for this were doing, these very involved schemes where they were paying people for stuff, where they were doing free giveaways on off Amazon funnels. Like, they were really doing it, and they were doing it regularly. So it was really obvious. If you want to make sure that someone sees the page as being premium, there are two things you can do. One is kind of gray hat, and that's asking a friend of a friend or someone who's not necessarily directly related to you to write a really detailed review. They need to buy the product at full price, of course, for that to show. Then the other thing that you can do is you can put in a lot of seeded Q&A. So what you can do is you can have, another friend of a friend or whatever. You can feed them a couple of questions or feed a couple different people some questions. They can post that onto the Q&A, and then you can write a detailed response describing why this thing is so great. But you need to have something that looks compelling, something that's interesting, something that tells the story of why this thing is so great. And there's certain things that you really can't put into the bullets or to the enhanced brand content, where you can talk about it in a little bit more approachable way in the Q&A and reviews. So that's also an option. Now, the reason I like the Q&A better than the reviews is because people will often search there if they're confused. They'll go there and they'll take a look and they'll say, okay, is this really what I want? And they'll look at it, and you can see the first answer in the Q&A. Whereas in the reviews, often people only see that first like cutoff part and then not look forward. But either one will get you a little bit more content, get you a little bit more attention on your product, and potentially make it to where you can make it a more premium product. Because with that big of a price increase, you're going to have a hard time convincing people this is the thing. This is the thing I want. Annette had a follow-up question. URL in packaging on private label FBA products. Yeah, so don't think of it as private label FBA product. Think of it as your brand that you are selling and importing in the United States. So anyone who is the importer of record is required to make sure that their product meets all packaging and labeling laws in the United States. As the importer, that's your job. So a lot of people will import things not realizing that it puts them right square into the position of being legally responsible for those products. And that means labeling. And if anything goes wrong, people need to be able to find you. That's the reason why all that labeling is required. Now, usually they can find you on Amazon, and a lot of people don't keep their packaging, but that's not the point. The point is the law says very clearly that you need to have your distributor name and address, and that it is okay to substitute a URL in exchange for the street address. So you still need to have your city, state, zip, but you can swap out the street address for the URL, and that can be a little bit less invasive to have a URL on there instead. Lee said, so you recommend PPC ads using category targeting? I'm going to try it. I would like your take on it. Yes, I do in some cases. So what I would recommend for category targeting is don't just target the categories Amazon suggests. What I found is that sometimes complementary categories can do even better than the ones that Amazon suggests. So if you have someone who say you're offering prenatal vitamins, I would suggest doing the category for pregnancy tests and for maternity clothes. Amazon doesn't recommend stuff like that. So category targeting can be pretty solid if you do low bids for categories that aren't necessarily anything to do with the product. Amazon will often do the substitutes and the close matches pretty well as far as their recommended categories. And then what you need to do is then go in and find the complements yourself and search for those complements and use them. There was one shoe product that we did where I went and found, it was an accessory product. And so I went and found all the different shoe categories that made sense for it. So stuff like that can work pretty well. What we found for that one was that some of the shoe categories did exceptionally well, like 4 or 5% cost. And then some of the other ones were like 300. So category targeting, I would just recommend making sure you've got a bit of a budget for it, because it can be very up and down. Okay, Vanessa asks, I've heard you need to make sure all those reviews are not all from your area, that those people are not social media connections anywhere. Is that true? Yes, absolutely. You don't want them to be obviously connected to you. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a social media connection. If you have a private account, Amazon can't find you anyway. But usually the people that you're strongly connected to on social media, you're also connected to on Amazon. So a lot of people use Amazon regularly. A lot of people use Amazon gift cards. A lot of people use other types of Amazon tools that they don't even realize, like subsidiaries and stuff, and all that's tracked. So if you have any sort of connection with them, or you've ever sent a gift to them, or they've ever sent a gift to you, or you use the internet at their house, or you worked together, all of those things show up as connections. So you just have to be careful about that sort of thing. That's why I usually recommend friends of friends, not people directly connected to you, because usually people are not hyper aware of their Amazon history like I am. I know exactly who I've sent gift cards to. I know exactly who I'm connected to there. So there are certain things that I just won't request. And that's something that you have to keep in mind. They keep track of everything. Okay, so next question. How would I know if the product failed? How long should I keep feeding it until I make a decision that it has failed? I have spent $850 on PPC, but only got $300. There are 0 reviews on my listing, but the PPC costs keep rising. Any thoughts would be appreciated. Actually, that's really normal for a new product. I'm sorry to say. So first thing is you've got to get a review. That will drop your costs just astronomically. If you have anyone that you can talk to, a friend who has a niece or nephew who's willing to do a review or something like that, find someone to do at least one review. Now, as soon as you have one review, what we usually find is the PPC costs drop in half. The other thing that you've got is you've actually gotten some sales. So using the keywords from those reviews, then you should go back over your listing and start making it a lot more attractive to other potential customers. If you've actually sold $300 worth off of 850 in PC, and it's not a failed product, it just means that you've got something that's missing on the keyword side, and you obviously need reviews. I mean, there's no way around that. So as far as that goes, we actually have a SEO challenge coming up where we're just talking about SEO. It's quite possibly one of the most boring topics that we have. And so it's going to be a shorter thing where it's only going to be 2 days, but it's going to be longer for those 2 days. And it's going to be really incredibly boring, more like a workshop than a challenge, if you will. But what I found is that after putting in that time of just slogging through the keywords and plugging in the keywords and moving the keywords around and making sure that everything's stuffed, we found that traffic just starts crawling upwards, and it's just really consistent. It's one of the ones that works best. It's really tough to do, but what I found is that it has just phenomenal results in the long term. Okay, next question. Is there a way to have Amazon not ship a 36-ounce tub of gel that is multi-channel fulfilled in a bubble envelope? Doesn't tend to arrive in good condition. No, there's not. They will use whatever is technically appropriate to fit it based on its dimensions. That means that you, the seller, are required to make sure that whatever packaging you ship it to Amazon in is sufficient to get to the customer. It's your job to package, not Amazon's. Amazon will match it in their computer to whatever fits the product, to where they can put a label on it. That's it. That's all they're concerned with. And the workers in the fulfillment center cannot stop the line for this. Keep that in mind. If they stop the line, they won't make rate. So they're going to ship it out in whatever crappy packaging the computer tells them to package in, because otherwise they won't make rate and they could get fired. So don't expect any human to stop it either. They will see it and they'll be like, wow, that's dumb. And they'll ship it out anyway. Okay, because they're not incentivized to fix your packaging issue. They're incentivized to get a certain number of items out in a certain period of time. So if your product keeps showing up smashed up, don't blame Amazon, blame yourself. Repackage. Okay, this happens all the time, and we get people dinged, items shut down for use sold as new, all kinds of stuff, because they send in packaging that's meant for retail shelves, as in it arrives in a pallet and then gets put on a shelf, and they'll send it in for e-commerce. E-commerce shipping is much harder on packaging than going into a store. Okay, a majority of the other FBA sellers for my product are selling in toys and games category, but my item is in arts, crafts, and sewing category. Should I request Amazon to switch my category to toys and games? Is there a benefit of doing this? You can. So toys and games, if people are searching by browse, maybe 10 to 15% of people do overall, not sure about toys and games, then you won't be found, right? If people are searching by browse, then they will find you in arts and crafts. Arts and crafts is a much smaller category than toys and games, so you can be in that top 30 that I was mentioning much more easily in arts and crafts. You can have a top ranking much more easily there, but there's not as much traffic. So as far as that goes, what you can do is you can try it. You can request Amazon move you, see what happens. But if you're never going to get in the top 30 wherever you're targeting for toys and games, and you could get in the top 30 for arts and crafts, then it might still be worth keeping it in arts and crafts, even though that's a smaller traffic area. Okay. Christina asks, when would you give up on a product? When you can't get any sales. So say you spent $800 on PPC and you've literally gotten no one to bite. You've got a problem with your marketing, you have a problem with your image, you have a problem with your price. Something is wrong. And if you've lowered your price, you changed your marketing, and you've improved your images, and you still can't get it to go, then it needs to die. We have a client where, unfortunately, a good half of their products are like this, where the price is too high for the kind of generic item that they're selling. It works fine in stores, and it works fine. The product itself is fine. It's a good product, but the price plus the marketing just doesn't go. A question here, is it better to hire a VA per project versus a monthly fixed rate? I have always had bad luck on a fixed monthly when I hire people versus per project, but most VAs do not want project jobs. Yeah, so I 100% agree that a project job is better for a VA. I have a core team of employees and then a handful of other people that we have on project basis because of exactly this. If everyone's on employee rate, then it ends up being a bunch of kind of unused capacity. So if you're trying to find someone to hire, then you would probably want to just do 10 hours a week, but then you got to make sure they're actually doing that 10 hours a week, not just project-based. If you want to do project-based, it's easier to hire an agency and then hold them accountable for that project. Make them handle it. Okay, next. Oh, right. Yeah, that's another thing. Problem with hiring VAs is that you don't know who they're connected to and what they're doing for you versus other people. Yeah, that's true. We have really specific NDAs in place. We are careful not to do the same kinds of products for the same kinds of people. We won't target the same kinds of keywords for people so they're not competing on PPC. So there's a lot of stuff that we do to try to make sure that we're not having clients compete with each other and trying to make things unique for each other. And, you know, as a VA, you take what work you can get, right? That's the whole point. Okay, so I think that covers all the questions. If you have not gotten your question in, please get it in now. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you liked today, please like the video. And if you know who can use the information, please share and ask them to join the group so they can see it as well. As a reminder, Prime Day Bootcamp starts this coming Monday, and we will be doing all of the videos and all the previous content is already up there. We'll be doing 3 live meetings a week, okay? And basically, it'll be kind of like what office hours are. You know how office hours are for in college where you have your professor who's there for that time? Well, I will be there, and if you jump on during that hour, you have your questions answered, and if you're not, then send it by the Facebook group and we'll get those questions answered, okay? Because again, the whole point of this is to get your listings ready for Prime Day and to have the best killer Prime Day that you can have, okay? And if they're doing it the same way they did it last time, they had a Prime Day preview that was actually bigger than Prime Day, which was pretty cool. All right, and then the last thing is if you have not signed up for Relentless Women, please do so. Keep in mind that this is content that is good for everyone. The reason why we're calling it Relentless Women is because we deliberately went after qualified, talented, capable women to speak. And I think it's about 90% or so speakers are women. And that was entirely on purpose because what we find is that nearly every other conference out there, 90% of the speakers are men. And we're like, wait, there are lots of qualified, talented, and capable women out there too, and we want to give them a voice. So this is for everyone, and we'd love to have you there. Okay? All right, we'll see you again next Wednesday for another episode of Ask Cascadia Live. Please feel free to submit all of your questions, and we will get them answered for you. Okay, all right. Take care, everyone. Bye.